Why should you never search for a job alone?
Job searching sucks. It really sucks, especially right now in this tough economy. And we're going to give you the tools to find the best job you can find today and set yourself up to succeed, and a bunch of tactics. I really wish people would do this. Do not send me cold introductions. If you send me a cold introduction, it is a person I do not want to speak to. We all hate networking. Right? I do too, by the way. I want you to negotiate the things that will set you up to succeed, to deliver on the OKRs that you have discussed already. Okay? One SaaS company had about 10 million in technical debt, and the other had 20 million.
Because there was such a greater demand for PMs in New York City.
Yes, product management isn't for everyone. It's I love it, but it's not for everyone. And by the way, if anyone listening is a recruiter, we need more recruiters.
The number one book that they bring up that has helped them is Never Search Alone. So we have Phyl Terry. Phyl Terry has helped over 30,000 job seekers get jobs. If you've ever been interested in how to handle the emotional and tactical aspects of a job search, if you want to learn more about Phil's best-selling book, Never Search Alone, if you want to learn more about candidate market fit, or even negotiation and how to negotiate so that you succeed in a role, this episode is for you.
Really quickly, I think a crazy stat is that more than 50% of you listening are not subscribed. If you can subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple or Spotify podcasts, my commitment to you is that we'll continue to make this content better and better. And now on to today's episode.
I talk to job seekers every day, and the number one book that they bring up that has helped them is Never Search Alone. So we have Phyl Terry here today. It's an honor. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So I really want to start with the title itself, Never Search Alone.
Yeah.
Why should you never search for a job alone?
Yeah. So let me answer that by saying, and I'll come right back to it. There's three big ideas in the book, right? The first is the title, Never Search Alone. I'll answer your question. The second is candidate market fit, which of course resonates really strongly in the product community where both of us come from. And then third is what I call playing to win-win, how you negotiate, how you interview. In terms of the title, why should you never search alone? Here's the surprising thing, Aakash, and many people don't believe me when I say what I'm about to say. And then they get into a job search council, which is what I propose, and we'll talk about that in a moment, and they experience it, and it kind of blows them away. No matter how smart you are, Aakash, no matter how fantastic your resume might be, maybe you were the VP of product at Google, right? Maybe you were the chief product officer who built, some great AI application or are doing that today. No matter maybe you were a CEO of a publicly traded company. No matter how smart and experienced you are, when you are in the job search, you feel anxious, nervous, and insecure. And everyone feels this way. And people don't believe me. They think, oh, it's only me who feels this way. If I were X, I wouldn't feel this way. Well, as you know, Aakash, I started running product councils in 2003. So quick background, was involved in the early internet, was a part of the first company that Amazon bought, then built a company called Creative Good. We were leaders in customer experience and product management. We were so early that Marty Kagan was one of our clients, by the way. This is how I know Marty, going back 25 years or whatever. And when I started the councils, I brought, Google and Amazon and all these folks together. Now I've had 2,500 senior leaders go through this program from every company in Silicon Valley. And every single one of them, okay, when they get into that next phase of either leaving the job, they've left the job, or they're thinking about leaving, they feel that insecurity and anxiety that everyone feels. It is the sort of the great leveler. And the only thing that I have found that addresses that is if you put people together in a support group, what I call a job search council, and you ask them to be open and vulnerable with each other, right? so that they actually share, oh, I'm feeling anxious. And when you're sitting around the room, one of, we do these LinkedIn lives every couple of weeks with job seekers. And one of the ones we did last year was prominent guy at Google who left and ended up taking a job at Capital One. Great guy. And he, when he got into that, job search council was the same for him, everybody else. You open, you're like, oh, I'm feeling insecure. Like you hear that around the room and you're like, oh my God, okay, I'm not alone. And it actually flips the experience emotionally from insecurity and anxiety and fear to hope and motivation, accountability, and confidence. These are the 4 things you really need in a good job search. And on the other hand, if you're feeling that anxiety that everyone feels, it can really undermine your search. It can undermine how you show up in interviews. It can undermine what you think you're qualified for. It can, it can take you in all kinds of directions that don't actually help you get to that next stage. So, it's kind of crazy. I feel bad that it took me so long to sort of figure this out. Like, this is clearly what we should have been doing in the job search for a very long time. I'm glad we're doing it now.
Yeah, I actually used the book, hooks you up with a matching service, which you can apply for and get a job search council. So I used one of those actually in Beazle in a successful job search. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you are. You're a walkie-talkie testimonial. So what was that experience like?
Yeah. So one of the coolest things is like the people who I was matched up with. They weren't exactly going for VP of product at a unicorn, but they had very similar life circumstances.
Yeah.
One was a really senior technical program manager caught up in the layoffs at Meta. Another one had been a sales engineer at a whole bunch of really high profile companies.
Yeah.
Now is working at Databricks, one of the hottest companies out there. Like all of us ended up landing really awesome jobs.
Wow.
And the cool thing was meeting weekly, tracking progress, seeing techniques that were working for one person that
and then
you're flying to me.
Right.
Yeah. And so there was so much sharing that was happening. But as you emphasized, a lot of it is the mental part as well.
Yeah.
Because when you go into that job search, you're feeling so anxious and there's never been a course, right, that we took. We didn't take a college course, job searching.
Nobody teaches us this. No.
Yeah.
Now listen, Aakash, listen, you're really smart. You're really capable. It's so helpful for your audience to hear that you felt that anxiety too, right?
Exactly. I mean, I was just even worried at the beginning, one of the things the council helped me do is just advocate for myself and speak up for how much experience I did have. I did have 15 years of PM experience. Sometimes you're even scared to put that label on yourself. You're saying, well, that's kind of braggadocious, but your council can kind of help you work through some of those.
Look, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about candidate market fit, but, the insight, which is not, brain surgery, rocket science, is, hey, when you're looking for a job, your skills and experience, that's the product that you're bringing to the job marketplace, right? And that's your product. And damn right you should feel proud of those 15 years. I appreciate you being so open. I'm so excited for your audience to hear you say this, right? You've really done a great job. A lot of people respect you, deservedly so. So even Aakash, folks, you see what we're talking about? Someone as smart and qualified who understands product as well as you do, you were reluctant to sort of step forward in a certain way, right? And your counsel helped you do that. I'm so thrilled to hear that. So you mentioned, just so your audience knows, we run a free program that's volunteer driven, where if you go to phyl.org, that's Phyl with a Y, you can sign up and we will match you. And then you will go through this experience together like you did. And we have put together now almost 4,000 of these, Aakash, of these job search councils. More than 100,000 hours of volunteer time have gone into building this. And people say to me, why aren't you charging? It's not like I'm against charging. I charge for other things, whatever. And I've made some money, but it's, we're really looking to drive a cultural impact here, Aakash. We want this to be big. We want this to be as ubiquitous as something like AA is, right? Like this becomes the standard way to look for a job. And, the volunteers have been amazing I mean, people are putting in thousands of hours to help make this work. And the product community has really taken this on. Marty Kagan wrote a lovely foreword for me. And it's just been great to see the product world, take this on and embrace it. And sometimes people say, is this only for product people? No, it's certainly for product people. They understand it the best because of the methodology. But it's kind of like what I like to tell people. This is what the product community has done to reinvent the job search, right? We've taken the product mindset to reinvent, and then we're giving it to the world. And I really hope that we can help many, many people.
Hey, let me take a quick break to talk about something that's completely changed my product management workflow, Linear. As a PM, I was drowning in tools, one for planning, another for issue tracking, roadmaps and sheets, and jumping between Slack, Intercom, and app reviews just to piece together customer feedback. Sound familiar? I was spending more time keeping systems in sync than actually building product. Every time development kicked off, my carefully crafted plans would immediately need updating. I was the human API between all our teams, constantly chasing updates and translating between tools. That's why I love Linear. I can capture customer feedback, shape product ideas collaboratively, quarterback cross-functional teams, and monitor development progress in one place. It cuts through the maze of disconnected systems that were complicating my life. Product teams at OpenAI, Vercel, Brex, and Cash App all use Linear. If you're tired of spending your days keeping different tools and teams in sync, check out Linear at linear.app/partners/AAKASH. That's linear.app/partners/Aakash. Today's episode is brought to you by Maven. The problem with most courses online, like Udemy, is there's no live component, and the instructors aren't experts in their fields, they're professors. At Maven, you get direct live access to experts and operators from the world's best tech companies. You can't get that access anywhere else, in any university, and you usually can't find them on YouTube either. I've featured so many of Maven's experts in the newsletter and podcast for that reason. To help you out, I've put together a collection of courses I recommend at maven.com/x/Aakash. This includes courses like AI prototyping for PMs, product sense for PMs, and getting an AI PM certification. Visit it now at maven.com/x/AAKASH.
Yeah, the roles that it helps is definitely not just product management. As I mentioned, there were program managers, engineers, sales. It can really apply broadly, but it is the core product skill set. Even the job search console itself, I think it kind of replicates the product trio that we're used to, or the product team meeting. You have a designer, you have an engineer, you have a PM. Everybody's talking about how we solve the same problem. And it's part of the way probably humans were brought up. We like to discuss our problems across the campfire.
So that's exactly right. And as you know, in the book, there's a Stanford psychologist named Irving Yalom, who I quote in the book. And he's done a lot of work on why small groups are so powerful. And he talks about, he thinks it's baked into our DNA from thousands of years. We were, as a species, we grew up in small groups. And it creates this motivation and sense of belonging that is just really, really powerful. We're tapping into some sacred impulses here that we didn't create. We're just trying to create the environment that makes that possible for the insecure job seeker, which everyone is, to do something different. Now, you laid out, hey, we provide all this structure, right? All these agendas. We've got this methodology for candidate market fit, which we'll talk about in a moment, methodology for networking, and also for interviewing and negotiating, all of which, is really important. But the core is, hey, let's get these folks together into a support group and have them meet weekly or even twice a week if they like. And these are going on all over the world. And just to the point of, it's not just product. It's also like a woman who was the CEO of a major financial institution in Europe joined a job search council. Like, we're talking about somebody who is making a salary of $20-30 million probably, right? And so this is the whole gamut. And she just wrote to me. She's just got a great new CEO job and she loved her council and they're all going to stay in touch. One of the side benefits of Aakash, and I don't know if you saw this, is friendships, right? You build a friendship with these folks, and that's such an important part. Have you stayed in touch at all with the folks you were part of, or?
The 2 of the 5 who are like regularly attending every week, so 3 of us basically are regularly in touch. And I think that the magical part of it is that that's exactly what we're lacking in this era. As we become increasingly more just working from our desk, working in front of a laptop, we've actually been trading off and sacrificing those relationships. And it sounds kind of soft, I think, when you're going into this is how you get a job. You control your emotions, but actually I think it's one of the most powerful insights once you really put your mind around it.
Yeah, cool. You want to talk about candidate market fit?
Yeah, this is my second favorite concept. I just recently wrote an entire newsletter.
I know you did. By the way, you asked me about, do you want to show your visual? Because I think you put together a great visual on it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did put together some visuals. Let's pull those up. So this is my take on your concept of candidate market fit here.
I love your dictionary pronunciation piece there, by the way. That was cool. It's nice. Yeah, and that's what we're looking for, is that intersection between candidate and market. And, it's, Akash, how, if you, not your book, but because I know you also have a book that you've written, which is terrific. But many career books, they act as if there's no market, as if it's just you, the candidate, and what do you want? And let's do some self-reflection. It's like, it's the same mistake of building products without any understanding of the customer or the market that you're putting them out in, right? It's insane. How did we do that for so long, right? Now, I do want you to understand what you want. And that is radical for many, many people, that they don't even take the time to think about what they want, right? Let's talk about, the equivalent of the waterfall method. In other words, the conventional way, in this case, of looking for a job versus building a product. And that's spray and pray. Just you quickly get out and just send your thing, your LinkedIn or your resume out to as many people as possible. It's a terrible way to go, right? It'd be like, creating a product blind and just throwing it in the marketplace and seeing if it lands somewhere, right? We would never do that. Well, why would you do that here? So first of all, think about what you want. And we have this tool, we call it the Mnookin 2-pager. It's named after my dear friend, Allison Mnookin. She was a longtime Collaborative Game Product Council member. She came up through Intuit and then eventually ran one of their divisions, spun it out and became the CEO of an independent company. And then now today she's sold that and she's at Harvard Business School on the faculty. She's absolutely terrific. But about 15 years ago, when she was at a crossroads and thinking about her career, we sat down and created what we now call the Mnookin 2-pager, which is just a really simple tool of saying, what do you like? What don't you like? And in fact, we start with what don't you like? And even what do you hate? Because that's always easier for people to access than what it is that they want. And then we go to what do you want? And, how are you thinking? And it's a draft. Doesn't have to be perfect. Some people go overboard and they make it so perfect and whatever. No. It's a talking point. And we'll come back to your diagram in a moment. And it's a talking point because what I really want you to do is, I want you to do some discovery. What I call a listening tour, right? I want you to go out and talk to people and get their point of view on you, your skills and experience, and on the market, right? And where there might be a fit. And Akash, a number of people, they get very nervous about doing this. Like, oh no, what are people going to tell me? But there's a lot of love out there, and you do this thoughtfully. It's so powerful. Did you do that? Did you go out and do a listening tour?
Yeah, it was so the greatest thing, right, is the Job Search Council kind of facilitates this because there's the lead person who also kept us ours. He was very good at keeping us accountable, making sure we knew exactly what we needed to do on any given week. And so I thought this, to me, for people who don't understand the concept is, I know you do 360 review feedback, but let's be honest, right? We're all political in those. We generally want to be nice to our friends. Right. We're not actually getting the real feedback. So as you start your job search, you go and ask people these questions like, what am I good at? What did I do really well? When did you see me really energetic and happy at work? And
right,
they have a perspective on you that you don't even have. It's going to open your mind.
Right.
Think bigger about, maybe I have done X for my entire career, but now I have an opportunity to evaluate. Yeah, that's exactly what gives me joy. And I saw people in my group say, okay, I've been X title, now I'm going to shift to Y. And that's how you make these decisions, is through that reflection.
And get that input. Like I got this great email recently, and look, it is challenging out there in tech world. It has been for a couple of years. And product management is going through some changes, as you know. And this person wrote to me, they're on Job Search Council, and they had this epiphany through their listening tour that they're really not a product manager, that they really need to go in a different direction. And I thought that was terrific. Product management isn't for everyone. I love it, but it's not for everyone. And it's really important to figure out what is it that you want to do and what you're a good fit for, right? And I consider that a win. Like, they would have spun their wheels for maybe a year and a half trying to get product roles, maybe not getting them. Maybe even worse, they got one, but they were unhappy and it didn't work out. And then they lost that job. And you know what I mean? We've seen people go on that treadmill. It's really tough. So we want you to go out there. We want you to think about what you want for sure. And then, like you said, go out and talk to people you worked with before. I call those reverse exit interviews, just as you described. But also people in your broader network and even recruiters. Now, people don't often realize recruiters have great insight about candidate market fit, but we don't often ask them, right? We just say, hey, get me a job. Can you get me a job? I want this job. Why can't you get me this job? And so, what do you think I'm a fit for? And if it's so important, and now I will say many of your audience, because many people in the world, not just in your audience, may not have pre-existing recruiter relationships, Aakash. And this is a challenge. So after we launched the free community, actually one of my collaborative gain council members, a chief product officer, volunteered to set up and run a recruiter network. So we now have recruiters who volunteer to help people who are in job search councils do those recruiter interviews, right? If they don't have those recruiter relationships already. And by the way, if anyone listening is a recruiter, we need more recruiters. Please go to phyl.org or get in touch with me over LinkedIn. We'd love to have you join and volunteer and help these candidates. And you also mentioned, I'll just switch gears. You mentioned there's a moderator or a lead for the Job Search Council who kind of, they're a job seeker. They volunteered to do that role. If anyone in your audience is going to sign up for a Job Search Council, and all of you are welcome now or at any point in your career, please be a moderator. We need more moderators. It's actually the thing, it's the limiting factor. It's what, if we had more moderators, we could launch more councils more quickly. We're always working to, and it's not a hard job. We give you a lot of support, and it's a great experience. You don't have to have any background in moderating, facilitating, or in this method to do it. So I wanted to put that plug out there. But in terms of candidate market fit, do you want to throw that slide back up again?
Yeah,
Thank you. And I appreciate you putting this together.
of course.
Maybe in a future copy of the book, I'll put it in and credit you with that if you're open to that.
Definitely.
So I love this. So it's really that intersection, right? There's a marketplace. So what do you want? But what does the market want? And what does the market see you as a fit for today? And I just want to pause, Aakash, and say, we all contain multitudes. We all have all kinds of skills, right? That's not the question. The question is, what does the market see you as credible for? So I always have people say to me, I could be a VP of product. And I say, I'm sure you could be a VP of product. But if the market is telling you that today, and this is important because, Aakash, let's be clear, 3 years ago, okay, if you were a director or senior director of product, you could get a VP of product role pretty easily. There was a ton of hiring happening. Everyone from Meta and Google to the smaller firms, everybody was hiring. And so that sort of inflated candidate market fit for a lot of people, which is amazing. In a down market, though, it deflates candidate market fit. It has nothing to do with you, right? Now, if today you're a director or senior director of product, depending on your skills and experience, depending on your background, the brands you've worked with, the kinds of case studies you can talk to, et cetera, you may not be able to get a director role. You may have to look at a senior manager role. You may even have to look at an IC role, right? Again, this is not an indictment of you or your skills. This is a reflection of supply and demand marketplace, right? And that's the other thing that I think people tell me that they love about candidate market fit. There's almost a therapeutic quality to it in the sense of, because otherwise we always feel like if people don't want us for this job or that job, that is some terrible thing about us. No, It has nothing to do with you in the sense that, the market conditions, you need to factor that in and understand it and see how you're playing for this market today, right? So
It's so powerful. So I was talking to somebody who she had moved from Florida to Philadelphia. So she
Yeah.
understood that market mattered. And yet she wasn't getting PM interviews.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, you know what? You're going to move again. You're going to move to New York City. And I kid you not, 1 month later, she was employed because there was such a greater demand for PMs in New York City than Philadelphia or Florida. And so
Right.
where you are matters. And I think that in 2025, unfortunately, most jobs these days, they're looking for hybrid. So they care about that address that you're at. There's some lucky few remote jobs out there, and go figures if you can, although they're hyper competitive. But these hybrid jobs, they care about that address. And so thinking about what is my market and how am I judged in this market, because how she's judged in New York City is actually probably different than San Francisco too. San Francisco, it's way easier to go up a level because there's crazy demand and not many people want to live in that high cost of living. New York, actually, everybody wants to live there, so it's a little bit harder.
It's harder market than San Francisco, but better than Philadelphia. And I'm really glad that you brought this up. So we're talking about the market in general, but we also have to keep in mind that local market, right? Not just the market, but the market that you're in today. And if you're in San Francisco, by the way, it is a better market, but you better have some AI skills. Like, so I will give you an example. And so we had a guy go through Never Search Alone. This is somebody who'd been a PM for 15 plus years, right? Had been a VP of product, had been in e-commerce companies, and 15 years ago was right on the cutting edge, but frankly got complacent. And one of the most difficult things about living in a capitalist system is this thing called creative destruction, right? It's this economic concept. Now, it's the reason the PM role exists, by the way. It's because creative destruction is the thing that creates the conditions for new products and services to emerge and old things to go away, right? It's literally our job in a way. At the same time, though, you could be a good PM in a particular era, and if you don't keep reinventing yourself, which is hard to do, Aakash, it's not like, especially if you rise up and you get into a more senior level, it's like, okay, I'm a VP now. I'm busy at home. I'm busy at work, whatever. And he just did not keep that reinvention happening. So now he looks like an e-commerce like 1.0 type guy and has a terrible candidate market fit for the world that we're in today. And, my heart goes out to him. And so what do you do in a situation like that? Well, you do everything you can do, right? You take classes, you see if you can advise startups at no cost and get some connection, build an app yourself or get together with some friends and build an app. Who cares if it goes anywhere, but give yourself some experience with Gen AI or at least machine learning, and have some way to talk about that, right? And so you have to keep reinventing. Otherwise, your candidate market fit goes stale. And it's a hard message. I wish, in a way, I wish it weren't true. On the other hand, it's what makes our economy dynamic and is why we have Silicon Valley and most of the jobs we have today. By the way, let's be clear. All the PM jobs today in the world that we talk about PM, not like, brand product management for Frito-Lay or something like that, but software, tech, product management. These jobs did not exist 25 years ago. Every single one of them, right? So what's going to exist 25 years from now that doesn't exist today? And are you going to keep reinventing yourself? I'm pretty sure, by the way, PM will be there, but it's going to continue to look different. And you have to keep your eyes open on that. It's tough. And that's also why you need a support group in the Job Search Council, but it's also why you need a support group in the job. So my next book, which people are like, when is it coming out? It's like, I don't know, a year or two away. It's basically the follow-on. It's, I helped you get a job. The next book, I'm going to help you keep that job and reinvent yourself, for this world of AI that we're moving into.
One of the most powerful things I find about candidate market fit that you mentioned was the story of the guy who decided he wasn't going to be a PM anymore.
Yeah.
If you're getting a signal from the universe that, hey, I've been laid off from my last 3 jobs, it's now an opportunity to kind of look back and say, were those jobs a fit for me?
Today's episode is brought to you by Amplitude. Building great digital products is hard. You know that better than anyone. Getting teams aligned, measuring what matters, and scaling your product strategy isn't easy. But what if you had a clear framework to guide your next steps? That's exactly what Amplitude built. They studied the best product teams to understand what really drives impact and turned those insights into the Digital Experience Maturity Assessment. In 2 minutes, you'll be able to see where your team stands and what you can improve to build better products faster. Click the link in the caption to take the free assessment and get a clear path to product growth.
That's right. So, what he discovered is that, the market didn't see him as a credible PM, but guess what? He also didn't love it. He didn't love it. He didn't have, he has this idea that he should want that job, right? And I get it. I love PM. It's a great job, but it's not for everyone, right? There's a lot of people for whom this is not the right job. And for him, it was like a huge relief, Aakash. It's like, just being honest. Okay, this ain't for me, but there is something else for me. And let me go find that. Or one of the stories I tell in the book. So, there's so many different stories, but so a woman, she was a chief data officer at a large company. And she wanted a CTO role, okay? And she went out there and she did it on her own. She spun her wheels for like a year. Nothing was happening. We talked. I said, get thee to the job search council and figure out your candidate market fit. So she did that, and she went and she spoke to a recruiter. And it was like, bingo. The recruiter said, look, you are not a fit for the conventional CTO role, which is what you've been looking at. But there are new CTO roles that are emerging that are data-centric CTO roles. Holy hell, are you a great fit for that? She's like, what? She didn't even realize that, right? And so then she did everything. And this is why I say in the book, once you figure out that candidate market fit, and we're going to talk about this more because it's the narrower and the more specific, the better. Right? We're PMs. We know that about product market fit, right, Aakash? You don't tell me your product market fit is everything, right? Give me that very focused fit. Well, the same is true here. So she figured out she was a great fit for a regional bank that wanted that data-centric CTO role. So she tuned her LinkedIn to that, her resume, the whole thing. And I swear, 3 weeks later had 3 serious offers and then 2 that fully came through and she could choose between after a year of spinning her wheels because she wasn't thinking about the fit correctly and she was just kind of broadly looking at CTO roles. When we talk about candidate market fit, there's a really important piece of human psychology, Aakash, that I want your listeners to understand, which is that we humans can be expansive, meaning if I give you a really clear, specific fit, I'm looking for a data-centric CTO role in a regional bank, right? So it's specific to the financial services industry, but not just anything, a bank, and not just any bank, a regional bank, and not just any CTO role, but a data-centric one, right? So you can see how clear and specific that is. Well, we humans, we can be expansive. We hear that. First of all, we can remember it, which is a really important point. But also we can, like if we hear of something, a data-centric CTO role in a healthcare company, that's not financial services, but it's regulated, and they'll think of you for that. On the other hand, if you say, hey, I'm looking for any kind of CTO role, no one's going to think of you because we can't be reductive. We can be expansive from a narrow focused thing that we'll remember and is clear, but we can be expansive from that, but we can't be reductive from a general statement. Another way that I say it is you can catch a job, not with a net, jobs flow through a net, but with a spear, with a really clear focus, right? This is hard for people. It is counterintuitive, Aakash. When you're in that job search and you're like feeling that nerves and you're like, you're aware of you need to put food on the table, let's say, like, oh gosh, if I'm clear and narrow, then I'm going to lose a lot of opportunities. It's actually the opposite. Recruiters love this, by the way. Recruiters love Never Switch Alone in general, but they love this because many people show up at a recruiter not having done this work, which means the recruiter has to do that work. And in many cases, they'll just skip over you, especially in a down market. If you haven't done this work to figure out your candidate market fit, you're making life hard on the recruiter and the potential hiring manager. This is about making it easy for them. You don't want to have to make them think. Do you remember that book from 20 years ago? Don't Make Me Think. It was a great book early on in the web days.
Yeah.
That's the same thing here. Don't make your hiring manager, your recruiter partners think. Make it crystal clear. I'm looking for a PM role, and specifically a director of product management in a healthcare, health tech company, Series B. Okay? All right, look, then people will remember, your whole network will remember, you turn your network into what we call listening posts because they're going to remember. And then if anything that sounds like that comes along, they'll think of you, right? And the recruiters, if they're looking for that kind of role, you are going to just really stand out. And we have this story on our website, this A/B test. So we had a chief product officer, Aakash, who went through the Job Search Council methodology and candidate market fit approach, but then, sort of like let it be broad, right? Didn't get anything. And then, he's like, okay, I have to really do this. Okay, this feels so counterintuitive. Got very narrow, boom, got a job, And in a down market, you need to find ways to stand out. If you've done the homework, if you're clear and you have that candidate market fit, boy, you are going to fast track your way to an offer.
I think the point about expansiveness is the one that holds people back the most, because they see all these job descriptions popping up on their LinkedIn and they say, well, if I narrow down to Series B, the Series C company just opened up. And it's not that saying you're targeted on Series B is all of a sudden going to disqualify for you from Series C. They also understand that those are similar stages.
They know how to do that,
and
right?
It matters.
They're going to look at you and say, oh my gosh, you're a near perfect fit. You want Series B, you're probably going to be open to Series C. Like, it's not that different. Now, if you say Series B, what is true is that, United Healthcare is probably not going to look at you. But we have to make those choices. Like, do you really want to go work for United Healthcare if you want to be in a Series B startup? Probably not. That place will drive you totally nuts. Now, if you said to me, Phil, that's where the jobs are, and I've done my work and people seem credible for that, okay, then that's your candidate market fit. Let's be clear, right? We're just giving examples here. But the point is that narrow in on where you are the strongest. That's the other point that's important. You want to be going, people say to me all the time, oh, I'll just go do a bunch of interviews. Well, I cannot tell you how demoralizing it is to do a bunch of interviews and not get very far, or even worse, get to the finalist role and get a silver medal. We talk about silver medals all the time. In the Olympics, they're great. In the job search, they're terrible. They're actually worse than if you don't get an interview because you got close. And so many people will come to us and they're like, I got 3 silver medals in a row. Okay, something's going on with your candidate market fit.
That's exactly how I react too. When they tell me like 3-second I'm like, well, that means that you're interviewing okay, right? It means that you're fit though for the role based on the experiences they perceive you as. And that's probably the other, I think, mental hiccup that people have. And I had too, as I shared, is you have to look at your past experiences and understand how the market is going to read them.
That's right. And again, you might have skills that your past experiences don't make clear, but if the market doesn't see that, it's not going to record it, right? So, this is all, like, again, we all contain multitudes. We all likely can do jobs that our resumes and LinkedIn don't suggest we can do. But in a tough market like this, boy, you've got to get narrow and focused. Right? Now, if it's a great market, you can be a little bit more, but even there, it's important. People always ask me, people come up with all kinds of things. They're like, oh, this is only for senior people. Junior people tell me that. Or senior people say, oh, this is only for junior people. or this is only for great job markets, or this is only for bad job markets. I have been running this program for 20 years. I've been testing it in up markets and down markets, during the great financial crisis and the dot-com crash, during the boom in the mid 2010s, during the pandemic, and now. It works. Like, you wouldn't say to someone, imagine what PM would say, oh, product market fit only works in this kind of market. No, I think we all agree that product market fit is basic, going to be a thing that we need to figure out whatever market we're operating in, right? That's not a temporary or partial principle. And it's the same thing here. Because again, just to make it super simple, you're the product. You're the product.
Yes, 100%. So we talked about that one indicator, you're getting silver medals. If we want to pull up my article, the other two indicators I had said were you are not getting interviews or you're not getting inbound. Can you talk a little bit about how important those channels are?
Well, certainly. I mean, if you're not getting any interviews at all, generally speaking, there's something going on with your candidate market fit. Usually it's going to be too loose, too broad. You don't seem like a fit. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you haven't paid attention to your LinkedIn, or maybe you're simply doing the spray and pray approach where you're just sending it out to 1,000 companies, which is only going to irritate you and really demoralize you. The one benefit of spray and pray is it feels like you're doing something.
Like washing the dishes, you actually have a sense of accomplishment after.
Right. I did something. And by the way, there's an important adjacent topic here, Aakash, which is if you have a partner or spouse, it looks to them like you're doing something. Whereas if you start Never Search Alone and you're kind of thinking about your 2-pager and then you're listening to her. And by the way, we're talking about a couple weeks of work here. We're not talking about, a 10-month study. This is all about, and our data shows that people who go through our program actually get jobs faster than the national average. Okay. It's going slow at first to go fast later. Because again, like that woman who spun her wheels for a year and then got her candidate market fit and bam, that's what we see happen. So they're spinning wheels here. They're spraying and praying, or they're not thinking about, they haven't done any work on their candidate market fit. They're sending their stuff out to companies where they have no credibility, or again, their materials don't reflect that because they haven't thought that through. Or they're aiming for jobs that are just really, they're a director of product and they're trying to get that chief product officer or VP of product role in a down market where it's going to be tough to compete there, right? Because just to make it clear, if we're in a down market like we are today, mostly outside of AI anyway, if you're a director of product and you want to go interview for a VP of product role, well, guess what? Who is your competition? It's chief product officers who are being pushed down to the VP role, right? So who's that company going to go for? Are they going to go for someone who's who's been at the VP or C level, or are they going to go for that untested VP candidate? Not in a down market. It's not going to be typical that they're going to go for you. Now, there are always exceptions, which is why I say, I don't want to tell people exactly what to do. I want to give them the how to go and figure it out with their network, with their counsel. Because if you came to me and you just spent 2 years at OpenAI as a director of product, can you get a VP of product role? Probably, yes, right? Let's be honest, or you were at Microsoft, in the AI division, in the AI software group, or in the cloud AI, the AI part of the cloud business, whatever.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So it's being realistic, and people are like, oh, but that's my dream job. I say, well, look, if you want that dream job, then you might need to take a 2-step strategy. So I tell the story in the book about Robert. Okay, so Robert was working at a traditional media company, but he was running the streaming business, okay? He was an EVP. He had 200 people. He had a huge product team, design team, engineers. He ran this great organization. And he realized, however, that the company and the part of the industry that he was in, was dying, And so he wanted to go work for a pure play streamer. Guess what? He goes and does his work on candidate market fit. He discovers he doesn't have a lot of credibility. He certainly can't move into a C-level role at a pure play streamer. His candidate market fit at one of those companies was going to be more like an IC, Aakash, if you can believe it. This is a true story. And, so he was like, oh, wow. But I said, listen, it's a two-step strategy. You go in there with your background, you do a great job, which you will in that IC, manager role, whatever. A few years later, guess what? You have the killer candidate market fit. You've run large teams. You've got great stories to talk about that. And you were on the cutting edge of the streaming business. Now, you can get whatever you want. There's a lot of opportunity. That is really difficult to do emotionally, to kind of like come to terms with that. Now, there's another option. He could have either stayed where he was, but he feared that was, that didn't have a great future. Or he could go work for some other media brand, maybe a tier 2 or tier 3 brand. Maybe it was a little bit stronger than the one he had, but not great. And I see people do this, and guess what? They get into their 40s or 50s, and then they have no candidate market fit. Like, they have spent their whole career in a dying part of the industry or something that's slowing down, and then suddenly they can't get any jobs, even an IC role. They are stuck, and they're virtually unemployable, right? So I am really, so this guy, it was good. He was in the collaborative game councils, and we talked a lot about this, and he took initiative. And he bit the bullet. He took that lower role. Very hard to do emotionally. Go from you're an EVP running a big team, right? Not only are you making more money, but there's so much social proof and respect, and you've got the first class ticket on the airplane, and, you've got the black car picking you up at work, to now you're in a cubicle land again, right? And it was obviously a drop in pay, although he got stock that ended up really outweighing that. But he did it. Huge respect to that. Courageous move. And it's totally transformed him. And some of his friends who stayed back, I mean, they're in tough. I just saw one of them last week. They're in a tough position now. I feel for them. And look, no matter who you are, even in that position, you can figure something out if you're willing to get practical and realistic and accept the situation. It's not personal to you. It's the market's changed. There's going to be something, but it's going to take that work.
Amazing story. So you have some really cool tips about how you actually build these networking connections. How do you actually get in touch with the right recruiters, right companies, right people at the right companies?
Yeah. So there's two moments in the Never Search Alone process where I talk about this, right? First is when you do that listening tour. And one of the secrets of the listening tour is that there's actually at least two things going on. Certainly the first is you want to get their feedback on you. How do they see you? What's the market? How do they see your candidate market fit? But I talk a lot about this, Aakash. My life is kind of predicated on this idea of asking for help. If you learn to ask for help well, and I'll define that in a moment, there's a very counterintuitive thing that happens that people do not believe until they've done it, which is that when you ask someone for help, well, first of all, they feel honored. Most people don't realize this until they realize when someone asks them for help, well, they feel honored. So put the hat, on the other head, if you will, or put the different hat on. And they feel honored. But more than that, they are more invested in your success. They want to see you. So when you're out there in the listening tour, you're getting feedback, you're getting insights, but you're also building your village of support. You're activating your network, right? So that when it comes time where you've clarified that candidate market fit, you go back to them and say, okay, Aakash, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that director of product in a Series B health tech startup. You're now going to be a listening post for me because you want to see Phyl succeed. It's totally counterintuitive. People think, oh, if I can't bother Aakash. If I bother Aakash, then, he's going to, he's too busy. Again, I'm going to talk about how you do it well so that you raise the odds that Aakash says yes. But if you do that, it really turns them on. And then when you get to the actual networking part, so you've got these listening posts, then you also go back to them and say, hey, who else can I talk to? Now, each step along the way, I want you to send them a newsletter. I want you to create your own little job search newsletter. And people, this is one of my recommendations most people don't follow, Aakash. I'm sorry to say. I wish they would. But I said, send out a note once a month to everyone you talk to and you're listening to, or everyone who's rooting for you. Give them an update, even if the update is, I don't have an update. Nothing new has changed. I've been trying. I'm working. I'm thinking. I'm close to my candidate market fit, or I just did. Give them an update. Here's the thing. There's something called the availability heuristic, right? I hate that term. It's academic and nobody can remember it. My preferred term is the out of sight, out of mind heuristic, which is to say, at any given time, you can only keep a few people top of mind. I want you to keep your network, I want you to help them keep you top of mind for them, right? So you got to send them those updates. You got to be in touch. But do it well, okay? Ask for help well. That's okay. So what does asking for help well mean? It means a couple of things. One is it means do your homework, right? So we talked about this. Work on the Nuke 2-pager. Really think about this. Take this seriously. If you do that, that's really important. What people don't like, the thing you really want to avoid, is the rip-off ask for help. That's where you do no homework and you're like, my favorite example of this, Aakash. So some people know the name Marissa Mayer. She was early on at Google and a real leader at Google, and then went on to be the CEO at Yahoo. Very prominent. She was a co-founder of my collaborative gain product councils with me back in the day, and terrific human being. So back in the day, I would get these emails from people I did not know. Oh, Phil, would you please introduce me to Marissa Mayer? I have this software product that I know Google would love. I don't know you from Adam, right? And what? What planet are you living on? Why are you wasting your own time, not to mention mine? Now, I do say in the book, and it's fine, it's still the case that I can, maybe 2 people have done this in my whole life, but here's an alternative way to do that. If you don't know me and you think you actually have something for Marissa, you might, if you said, Phil, I've thought a lot about this. I've done some research. We're working on this thing. I think it's possibly a fit for Google. I may be wrong. Here's the thing I think that works. Would you be willing to spend 10 minutes with me to give me some feedback? Now, I might not do a phone call with you, but I'll respond to that email. And I would actually give you some very clear feedback. This is not even close to what Google's thinking about these days. Or, holy moly, actually, this is something that I know is on Marissa's mind. Let me ask her permission first. And this is the next key tip, Aakash. I really wish people would do this. Do not send me cold introductions. First of all, I have a rule, and it is 100% true, okay? If you send me a cold introduction, it is a person I do not want to speak to. Now, if Aakash, let's say there was someone that you thought I would want to speak to, and actually you wanted to ask me a favor. Maybe it's even someone, maybe I don't want to speak to, but you'd like to ask me for a favor. We got to know each other. You brought me onto your podcast. Would I be willing to talk to someone? If you reached out to me and said, Phil, I need a favor from you. I'd like to ask a favor if you're open to it. Fine, not. But here's this person. And boy, it would mean the world. My niece is looking for her first job. Would you be willing to speak to her or whatever as a favor to me? I'm going to say yes to that. Because first of all, you're being honest, and you're asking me for a favor. I'm going to say that. But if you just send me a cold email, Phil, I want you to meet blah, blah, blah. And I know the two of you are going to really hit it off. Have you had this, Aakash? I know you've had this, right?
All the time, yeah.
Have you ever gotten a cold intro that you wanted?
I somehow just try to act like I haven't seen them.
Yeah, you just ignore it, right?
Yeah.
Now, look,
so sad.
If Marty Kagan and I have known each other for 25 years, we're very good friends. If Marty sends me a cold intro, I'll respond to that, right? That's the point. If someone who's a very close friend of yours does this, generally speaking, they're also not going to do it for someone that you don't want to talk to because they know you well, right? So there's 1 or 2 exceptions, but that is it. I mean, And by the way, I still will always ask Marty his permission, even though he said, Phil, you don't need to ask me. But it's just how I roll, right? I just want to make sure that person wants to get that introduction. And by the way, I won't ask them permission if it's something I know they're not interested in, right? Unless it's just, Marty, my nephew, would you please talk to them? Like that kind of thing. And it's a favor to me, So permission-based introductions, Aakash, so important. And, when I actually give people templates for this. So when you're networking and let's say, okay, so I'm talking to you, Aakash, let's say you work at OpenAI, right? And I'm just going to make this up. I'm an engineer, you're a PM, and I want to talk to somebody in engineering there. And I ask you, will you do that? And you say to me, sure, here's this person's name. Go ahead and email them. Well, that's okay. But what I want you to do is say, Aakash, would you mind actually asking them permission to introduce us? Would you be up for that? And if you are, here, I'm going to even give you the template to make your life easy. Here's my attempt in your voice to ask this other person permission to introduce them to me. Okay? Make it easy. Make it easy for everybody. Not everybody's going to agree to that. And some people can say, no, I don't have time for that. Here's the email. But if there's someone you have a good relationship with, they generally do that, right? I was on the phone just with someone yesterday. I run a high school business literacy program. This is a fun thing, which we may get a chance to talk about at some point. By the way, I'm going to eventually open it for adults because every PM should go through it, right? PM need to know basic stuff about business and finance and balance sheets and P&Ls and stuff like that, and how the stock market operates. It's just good basic stuff, right? Not every PM has that fundamental knowledge. Anyway, the point is, I was talking to someone prominent in the ed tech world, and they were going to introduce me to someone else, and they're like, "I'll just give you their email." And I did. I said, "Listen, if you're open to it, would you ask her permission first and then introduce it?" And he was like, "Oh, that's a better idea. Yeah, I'll do that." Right? Now he might have said no. Fine enough. Yeah, give me the email and I'll reach out to her and say, I don't, Paul suggested I reach out. I don't know if you're open to talking. And that's just always be really like, just, are you open to talking? If you're too busy, no worries. Thank you. Like that kind of tone, it really matters, right? You're a real person. By the way, all of us, how much spam do you get every day from all of these companies, all their software products are trying to sell you something, most of the time it's like totally irrelevant, but even if it's relevant, it's like, I'm not going to respond to these. I don't know why these people do it. Somehow enough people must respond. I don't know. So to speak as a real human being with courtesy, with an understanding for how busy folks are, and nonetheless representing yourself as a smart, proud person who wants their assistance and help and deserves that. Are those the kinds of tips you were thinking about, Aakash?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what people are trying to do and what they're sending me messages about is, can I talk to you for 15 minutes? But they completely missed like all of the elements of getting a warm introduction to me, having a reason to talk to me, having potentially some value to even offer because they did their homework. I think all of those elements that you mentioned, that's what makes an effective networking strategy. And because we're narrowing people's aperture, right? They always want to be expansive, but we're saying be narrowed. They get scared. Like, what do I do next? But these are the steps you take next. You get warm introductions, you get permission-based ones.
And do the homework. Like, if you're asking for a warm introduction to, someone who's a VP of product at Airbnb, please know something about the challenges and the product challenges that Airbnb has. Go listen to that person on a podcast, go see, whatever, if they give a talk or just, like come in there. Like, and it's funny, I like early on when the book came out, one of my old friends, but not someone we hadn't been in touch with for a long time, not really friends, but contacts, whatever, is like, "Oh, Phil, I've got a friend." They cold introed me to someone like, "Oh, they're looking for a job. I was wondering if you get on the phone with them." Like, I just wrote the book, right? No, I'm not going to get on the phone with you. What are you thinking about here exactly? And I said, listen, what I actually said, just out of respect, was like, I'd be happy to talk, but it's not going to be useful for you or me to talk right now. Get on the Job Search Council, read the book, do a listening tour. When it comes to the point where you've got a candidate market fit, if you want help, give me a call. Go do some homework, right? And then actually we can have a fruitful conversation. Because that's the other thing. What am I going to say to somebody? Let's get on the phone, tell them about how to look for a job. Like, no, what? I fucking wrote a book. It took me 10 years. I went through 400 drafts. I tested it. By the way, your listeners should know, I dog fooded the heck out of this thing, right? Like, we went through 400. I went through 400 drafts of this book. I was testing and testing and testing and testing it. I had people not just reading it, but using it, forming job search councils, going through the Maven 2-pager, the candidate market fit. So if any point you're reading the book, you're like, oh, how did Phil know I had that question, right? When I was reading that paragraph. Well, it was a simple answer because somebody told me they had that question when they were reading that book, or they struggled with that point and that I had to get more clear at that. I really, be aware of who people are. And it's not, we're not talking rocket science here. You don't have to study them for years. I'm just saying, do a little bit of homework. Yeah. And I can tell you that, even after I talk about this publicly and wrote it in the book, I still don't get people approaching me that way, Aakash.
It's very rare. So it stands out. And if you do it, you tend to get a pretty high response rate. Not 100%, but you will get a greater than 30 to 40% response rate. So if you're doing it to 3 to 4 people, you will get conversation.
And that's important to point out, by the way. This is not 100%. I'm so glad you're saying that. And we all hate networking, right? I do too, by the way. But that's why you want that support group and you want to be smart about it. And when someone doesn't reply, it has nothing to do with you. How many emails do you have in your inbox, Aakash?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, back in the day, we were the sort of founders of the whole inbox zero concept. We're talking 25 years ago. It's been a long time since I could keep a zero inbox. It just doesn't, I can't do it, So if someone doesn't respond, they may not have even seen your email, or they might have seen it briefly, but they were in the middle of launching a product or doing whatever they were doing. And so that's why and so we have tools in the book for your council to keep each other accountable on the number of outreaches you're doing, the number of meetings, the number of attempts of outreaches. Once you've got your candidate market fit set and you've got your LinkedIn profile synced up with that, then it is a numbers game, right? You don't want to do the numbers game though until you have an idea of what you're doing. You're going to spin your wheels, like I've seen happen, especially in a market like this. And if it's a better market, you might just end up with suboptimal offers.
Yeah, you don't want to go cast a net in the middle of the ocean where there are no fish. You want to go spearfishing near the coral reef. So we've got you spearfishing near the coral reef. You even catch a fish, right? I think I love your perspective on how to negotiate because it's not just about the money, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not. And so we have this program for, if you don't mind, how to both interview and negotiate, right? So it's sort of a combo. And I will tell you, Aakash, that it is, I can't say it's more powerful than candidate market fit because boy, is that a strong concept, right? By the way, funny story on candidate market fit. So I was struggling for years. It seems so obvious now. I struggled for years to figure out what to call that. And literally the morning I was sending my final draft to Marty to review and consider writing a forward, I woke up at 5 a.m. and it was like, it just appeared in front of me. Like candidate market fit. I'm like, oh my God, that is what I've been talking about. It's like crazy that it took that long. I love that concept, obviously. But this next one, what I call playing to win-win. And we use a tool called Job Mission with OKRs. Your audience knows about OKRs. But this is so good. And here's the thing, Aakash. We keep data on this, right? When someone gets a job, they do an exit survey with us, and we ask them a number of things, but we start with like, okay, what did you do? And in particular, did you do a job mission with OKRs? And I'm going to say more about what that is in a moment for the audience. And I will tell you, since day one, and so I'm now looking for a volunteer evangelist whose only job will be within the Never Search Alone community to promote the adoption of this tool because it's so good. It has never gotten above 50% of the people who go through Never Search Alone. I'm not talking about the general public. I'm talking about the people who, get a job search council, do the Middleton two-pager, do the listening tour, do the candidate market fit, right? And then they start doing interviews, and they don't do this. So I really want your audience to hear this. Please, please, please adopt this. It's so tested and it performs so well. So the concept is this. I want you to help lead the entire conversation. I want you to help build the relationship with the hiring manager. I want you to have a little bit of courage. And this is part of the challenge because it does take a little bit of courage. Okay. And now at first, the client's not going to know anything necessarily, except that you show up really well. So the first step is this. When you start interviewing, I want you to privately, on your own, you're not showing anyone else except your counsel. I want you to privately start drafting a job description, but I call it a job mission with OKRs. So many companies have terrible job descriptions, Aakash, and they don't have clear OKRs or accountabilities in them. They're general. It's not even clear they know what product management is half the time, right?
Never clear.
So I want you to write your version, okay? And here's the cool thing. By starting to draft it, you're going to start thinking about that role and that company, and you're going to realize questions that you need to ask in the interview to get clarity for your job mission with OKRs, which, again, you're doing privately so far. You're not telling them anything except you're surfacing great questions. Most people do not bring good questions to the interviews. By virtue of having thought about it a little bit and having some really pointed questions, you are going to stand out right off the bat, okay? Now, after you've done a couple of interviews, you're going to start to have a draft. It's not going to be fully baked. And this is one of the problems that people have. They think it needs to be perfect. No. It's just a draft, okay? It's just some initial thinking about the role, about the accountabilities, about the outcomes, about the objectives, etc., okay? So 2 or 3 interviews in, I then want you to take that draft, and again, it's not perfect, say to the hiring manager, and these are very specific words I'm going to use, okay? So if you're in the audience, I want you to write these words down the way I say them. I want you to say, hey, I'd love to have a quick sidebar with you. I've been thinking about the role, and I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, okay? So you're not going in and telling them how you think it should be. You're actually saying, hey, I want to make sure I understand it correctly, right? So that's important. You're not threatening. You're not saying, oh, I know the job better than you, although you might, but you're not presenting it that way, okay? You sit down with that hiring manager, and by the way, don't just email it to them and what do you think? No. It's got to be either over Zoom or in a coffee, live, right? I want there to be a conversation. You show this to them, Aakash. Oh my God. It will blow them away. Your imperfect, not fully baked job mission with OKRs, the fact that you did that. So what's going on? There's like 5 things happening here that I want to just unpack. Number 1, and Aakash, you know this because you have hired people. One of the biggest challenges when you're hiring someone is you want to know, are they just a good talker or can they get shit done? Right? What you are doing is you are showing them that you can get shit done, that you're accountable, that you can make things happen. You take initiative. That's huge, okay? Just that you did that at all. Number 2, the fact that you thought about the accountabilities and the objectives, the OKRs, whoa, that's impressive. Number 3, you're probably in advance of how they're thinking about it, and that's impressing them too. Like, oh my God, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, wow, the hiring manager said, wow, this is better than the way I was thinking about it. They're like ready to hire you. And that's the point, is that it increases the odds of getting an offer. But one more thing. How many people, okay, everybody in your audience, I want you to raise the hand, okay? How many times did you take job A and it turned out to be job B? How many times did you take a product management role? It turned out it wasn't product management. Those were just the words they were using. Maybe it was project management, So by virtue of doing this, you have a real document where you can have a real conversation about what the job is and what it isn't. And that is so helpful, right? Because if it turns out it's a project management job, well, look, if you need to put food on the table, maybe you decide you're going to do that. I always say that to people. People need to make those decisions. They know what they need to do for themselves and their families. But you at least are eyes wide open about what it is, and you're not going to get reactive and upset that it wasn't a product management job. But the clarity usually means, okay, so no, not that OKR, it's this one or that. And then you both know what it is. It increases the odds of an offer. And then, Aakash, here's the cool thing, right? So first of all, none of us knows how to negotiate unless you're like an M&A negotiator. Like, people are like, oh, Phil, like, yes, I went to Harvard Business School, but let me tell you, I'm like the least ruthless person who went to Harvard Business School. I'm not the person that you put in the M&A negotiation, okay? That is not who I am. I'm all about collaboration. And that's how this is designed. It's collaboration. So when you get that offer, you now have this job mission with OKRs. And guess what? I not only want you to get an offer, I not only want you to get a good offer for a good job that's a fit for you, but I want you to be set up to succeed in that role. That's the most important thing. I don't want you to take a job and then you're not set up to succeed. That's really demoralizing. This is game changing. This is career changing, Aakash. If you're set up to succeed in a role, it can change the rest of your career and everything that follows. So what I want you to do when you get that offer is I actually don't want you to negotiate comp first. I want you to negotiate the things that will set you up to succeed, to deliver on the OKRs that you have discussed already. Okay? So you're the hiring manager, Aakash, and I know we've agreed that I need to increase conversion rate by 20% or retention rate by 30% or whatever it is, in a SaaS business or in a e-commerce business or whatever we're doing, or or it's a qualitative OKR. I need to have this thing launched by X date, whatever. So then I'll say, okay, so Aakash, we agreed on these things. And now, I think what we're going to need to look at here is, my sense is we're going to need to have a training budget. I think this product team isn't really, we need to up-level them. And, we need to get them, subscriptions to Akash's newsletter. And we need to, get them over to a Silicon Valley Product Group workshop or whatever it might be, And, what else? I think what do you need? What do you need? Do you need mentoring? Are you joining a business in a sector that you don't know? So when that happens, I'll often say, depending on how senior the person is, you've got to negotiate a mentor, maybe a board member who spends time with you to really, really help you get up to speed beyond sort of the basic stuff. Because if you're going to be the product lead in an industry that you don't understand, you need to really get up to speed fast, right? What other things? Well, is there technical debt, right? We know what technical debt is in this audience. So, I had 2 chief product officers who were taking CPO, CTO roles. It was crazy. It was literally at the same time, both in SaaS companies, okay? One SaaS company had about 10 million in technical debt and the other had 20 million, okay? The guy who was going for the 20 million saying, I said to both of them, you've got to negotiate the check for that technical debt as part of your package. Because if you can't erase that technical debt, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're going to be dead in the water, right? We all know that. So the guy who was going for the business with the 20 million in technical debt did that. The CEO agreed. He got a check on day one. The debt was erased 6 months later. This guy moves fast. He's very good. 6 months after that, he was launching new products. 6 months after that, so 18 months, he was actually promoted. He retained his chief product officer role, but he was given a GM role. Okay, he was now in charge of a division of the company. And then 2 years into it, he was actually a candidate for the CEO spot. Okay, that's what I'm talking about in terms of being set up to succeed. Now, the other guy, and he and I were just talking last week. We laugh about this all the time. It's like, I'm your case study. I know. So 10 million in tech debt. I told him to talk to the CEO. He did. The CEO said, well, if you come in and really analyze it and make the case and make a good case, then we'll consider it. And this is a guy, by the way, he had done like 8 turnarounds over the last 20 years. Like, he really knows how to quickly identify. He knows there's that much technical debt, right? There wasn't much analysis that further needed to be done. And so I said, listen, you can't take the job under these conditions. And in his case, by the way, he had financial room to not have to work to be choosy. Now, again, sometimes you don't, and I want to admit that, and you have to make those decisions. But he decided to take the job anyway. Okay, I said, listen, you lose your leverage. You lose your leverage, and I'm not talking about negotiating against the company. I'm talking about these are in the best interests. What's going to help you succeed is what's going to help drive the company. Day 1, didn't get that check. 6 months in, didn't get the check. 12 months later, didn't get the check. 18 months later, he's looking for a new job, right? And we have to introduce an important concept that is true no matter what career. We all have opportunity costs, Aakash. We have opportunity costs. If we take a job A, that the opportunity cost we pay is that we're not taking all the other possible jobs. And if we take job A where we're not set up to succeed, we may pay a really high penalty because we might be pushed back 2 years in the development of our career. Remember, person A got to that CEO role in 2 years. Person B is back to the drawing board 2 years later. We do not have infinite time in our careers. Everything has an opportunity cost to it, even at the more junior levels. Well, people say, well, that's all great if you're a senior person, but what if you're junior? College students. So when I work with college students, Aakash, they're not going to negotiate technical debt, obviously, and they're not going to negotiate some big training budget for their team because they're not going to manage a team. But guess what? They can negotiate their own development path. They can negotiate what kind of training, mentoring, like what kinds of, if you're going into a consulting firm, literally asking, can I be put on one of the better teams? I want to be put on some of the top teams. Just asking that. The company's like, really? That's cool that you want to do that. Yeah, we'll make that happen. And I had a college student do that. And it was great. It rocketed her career forward. So this is being smart, but it's being collaborative. And it's thinking about the company. Now, if you go and negotiate budget, resources, support, and I go through in the book, I have a whole checklist of the many things you can negotiate. It could be PR, additional PR marketing resources to make sure you've got enough for the products that you launch. It could be the opportunity to sit on boards of other companies if you want, whatever it is. Once you've done that, Aakash, first of all, the companies love it. I had this company, the CEO called me. He's like, Phil, I can't believe it. One of your guys chief product officer, was just negotiating with me for the training budget for the team that they don't even manage yet. That blew me away. That made me want them even more. This is part of the psychology. And then you talk about compensation. This is a tough market to get more comp. But just this last week, we got more comp for a person because they did this process. And the company was like, really? Why? Okay, fine. We'll pay you more, And I tell people, look, comp is not the most important thing in the short run. It's being set up to succeed, because if you do, then you can command more comp. I want you to make more money. I want you to create generational wealth. It's just like how you set yourself up to do that. So how's that?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that I wish your book had come out 10 years earlier, because I can talk about a specific role I had where I knew that I was coming in at like a director level product person, and I knew that they hadn't hired like enough engineers and designers to support a director of product. Like a director of product, you have to be leading like at least 15 to 20 engineers and designers to make enough impact. They didn't have that yet. And they're like, oh, you're going to grow the team. But what I didn't do is I didn't secure that headcount. So when it actually came to being in the role, the headcount came in much slower than I would have expected. And I had assumed everybody, was so excited about me, they would support what I needed to do to get there, but you lose your leverage.
Yeah. And look, if you had brought it up in that interview, in that negotiation, and said, hey, we're talking about, I'm going to be the director of product. So we're talking about 15 headcount here, right? Like we understand that you have the budget, we're talking on average, all in with benefits and stuff, probably 150 to 200 a person at least, some a little more or less, whatever it is. And, so what are we talking? We're talking $2.5, $3 million, maybe a budget here. Like, do you have that? Are we on board? Are we on the same page? Oh, no, 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 no. Well, no, yeah, no. Or, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think really, yeah, okay. I think yes, we really want to make, that's what it takes to do this. Yeah. Aakash, I'm Aakash. Yes, that's what it takes to do this. That's what we're talking about here. That's what the market opportunity is, right? That's what we want to go for. Oh, okay, great. Yep. You know what? We're on for it. Well, you got it. Well, guess what? Day one, bam, you start hiring, right? Instead, in that job, you spent months negotiating the budget, which they wouldn't do, and this and that, and you stalled, and the company paid for it, by the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, but then when they came to look at me versus other directors of product who actually had 15 engineers and several designers, they were able to ship so much. And it's like, I had like 3 engineers. And so I was able to ship that amount of stuff.
Yeah. And so they didn't get your full benefit, and they didn't get the benefit of those products that you could have shipped into the market. That's why, again, this is not ruthless stuff here. This is like, let's have the conversation about what this is and what are we talking about here? And I'm telling you, so one of the top guys at Amazon has been a part of the program, and I spoke to him about this recently, and he confirmed what I knew. He said, Phil, if he's hired about 2,000 people in his time, he's like, Phil, not a single one has ever done something like that. But if someone presented a job mission with OKRs to me during the interviews, I would hire them on the spot. I'd be like, what? That's amazing. So look, there's a lot of fear when people get into the interview and negotiating process. There's a lot of fear. They're afraid if they do anything, it'll hurt their chances. And of course, if you're a jerk or you're arrogant or, whatever, you don't listen, whatever it might be, you'll hurt your chances. But that's not what we're talking about here. This is a collaborative process where you will show, not tell, how good you are. They will want you more, and you will build that relationship, Aakash. So you now have a relationship. So you start day one, you're already working. You've already been working together, and you have each seen how you work together well. And it's not abstract or generic. And by the way, one more thing, I can't stand how good this is. It really, and again, I'm not touting myself here. I worked with a lot of people to develop this over the years. And this is all free. I'm not selling you anything here. I'm trying to sell you on an idea. Very often when you take a job, the hiring manager leaves within a month or two. And then you're totally bereft. Nobody knows sort of what you're doing or what you're talking about. More junior roles can tend to be okay, but the more senior you get, that's really problematic.
Danger zone.
You're right. Starting at the director level, you built, suddenly you don't have you don't have a manager and someone's not looking out for you. You have a temporary person. Every time that's happened, the person has ended up leaving, except when they have that job mission with OKRs, because they can show that new boss or that interim boss, here's the role in the OKRs that we discussed and what I'm working on. Oh, okay, great. That's what you're working on. That's what you've got. Yep. I'll support that, and off you go. So it's really valuable to not just get the offer, but to get that set up to be successful, including if you lose the hiring manager who you built that relationship with early on, which happens all the time. I had recently a member who moved from the United States two times, to Sweden and one to Spain, to work with a particular person, move their whole family. Okay. They get there, within a week, the guy announces they're leaving. Now they're like in a different country and stuck and have no political capital inside that company, no one who's going to advocate for them, and the whole thing just crashes. I've never seen that work well, except when I've seen people have this job mission with OKRs. Now there's been a couple of instances where even that didn't make the difference. There's no guarantee. We're just trying to raise the odds here of success, right? How can you be successful? And in 9 times out of 10, I've seen it succeed in that case. It's kind of an insurance contract.
Phyl Terry, thank you for being so generous with these ideas. I think, how does it feel changing so many people's lives?
You know, Aakash, if you get a chance like this once in your lifetime, you are profoundly lucky. I can't tell you. So my mother started the first council in 1960. I tell the story in the book. And it's sort of in the blood. It's a family business almost, if you will. And I dedicated the book to her. I talk about her a lot. It's one of the reasons everything is free, because it's a way to honor her and the legacy and what she taught me and so many others. But I can't tell you. I mean, I've done a lot in my career that I'm proud of, but the ability to work with so many volunteers and to create a movement like we're doing. We've had 30,000 people participate in the program. We have 4,000 job search councils today. And we feel like we're very much day one with this. And you know what's so cool? And every dollar from the book goes into the community. It doesn't go to me. I've made that life. It's a permanent commitment. And sometimes people say, well, why don't you want to take that money? Well, I'm in the fortune. I'm not a billionaire, but I'm in the fortunate position that I can afford to do that. Number one. But number two, it's like, wow, given that I can do that, to be able to do that, it's just such a privilege. I can't tell you, it is so meaningful. And we all want to have that in our lives. That's that sense of meaning, that sense of purpose. And we can find it in a lot of ways. People tell me, you don't just have to be doing something like this to find it. You could be working in a standard company, but you're creating a great team, a great product team, empowered team, where people are growing. There's so much satisfaction in seeing people grow and develop under your wing and, building great products and supporting customers. There's a lot of purpose to be created in the world, but this has been special. And I truly feel grateful. The team has been, the volunteer team. I just have to name a few people. Emily Teeter So basically what happened is when the book came out, I had not anticipated building this whole suite of free services. I thought, okay, we'll put out the book and we have the free tools and people will do this on their own. And then a good friend of mine, longtime collaborative game member, a guy named Brent Turetsky, who's terrific if you haven't met him. He's worth having on the show. He's now the SVP of product at Peloton, and just incredible product guy. Okay. Longtime member of my product councils. He said to me, Phil, I think you might want to do something to help people find each other. Now, he had run a job search council as part of the writing of the book. He'd given me a lot of great feedback on the book. And so, and I respect and I listen. So at first, I asked Emily, who's also in one of our product councils, would you like to help me out with this? And she said yes. So we put up we had a Google sheet, and we were almost immediately overwhelmed with that. We're like, okay, well, now we're going to have a Google form that goes to a Google sheet. Then we're going to do a little Google script. Well, now we have, we've got a more robust, but even that, like we joke sometimes behind the scenes, all the work that the volunteer team does in the matching. We feel like we're in an ER. We can never catch up. There's so much need here. And in the next couple of years, we're going to build a seriously robust platform, right? Yeah. So we do now have automatic matching, but even that, there's always exceptions and there's tons of communication and stuff. But Emily Teeter, she has put in 3,000. She's had a full-time job as a product manager, where, by the way, she wins awards at the company for best employee and amazing product leader. And she's put 3,000 hours into this, completely free, Aakash, completely free. There's no way I could have done this without her. And then behind her comes Tamara Adlin, who was one of my original council members when she was at Amazon. And now she runs all the orientations and she hosts the LinkedIn Live. And then, I can go on down the list. Bhagashree Gate, who's now the team coordinator, and we have this robust team. They're all volunteers, Aakash, and they're doing incredible work. Steve Cook, who runs our recruiter network, who's a chief product officer, amazing. So it's amazing to work with them, and it's amazing to be able to do something. And by the way, what's cool is we're not government funded, so nobody can cut our budget.
Doge has not come for never search alone job councils.
I'm sorry, Doge can't touch us, baby. Trump can't pass a tariff or something. I don't know. We're here. We're operating in this interesting space. And for your listeners who listen, when is this going to come out? By the way, do you know yet?
It usually takes about 3 weeks.
Okay, so if people listen to this before April 22nd, I'm throwing a big party in San Francisco Tuesday, April 22nd. If you are interested, you can go to phyl.org and get a link to that. If you missed that, we're doing things all over the country, and you can certainly go to phyl.org. You can watch videos. You can sign up for a job search council. It's all free. We do require you read the book, because we found that if people didn't read the book, they weren't jobs. So we don't actually require that you buy it, though. You can get it from the library, borrow it from a friend. If you do buy it, know that every dime goes into the program, doesn't go to me, and that's permanent. We've made that commitment. I've made that commitment. And we're here for you. And if you want to come at any time, and by the way, if you're in a job, we didn't talk about that at college. If you're in a job and you're unhappy, you want to look for a job, you can also join one of our councils. We'll put you with other people in jobs. We call them slow seekers, people who can't do a full-time job search because they have a full-time job, but we'll match you up with other slow seekers as you start to think about what you want to do next.
I have very rarely met someone as generous with their time, their wisdom, their knowledge. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful, Aakash. You're a wonderful interviewer, and I feel really grateful to have been here today. And I really appreciate you letting me share this with your audience. It's cool what you've built.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that episode. It would mean a ton to me and the team if you could please subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple and Spotify podcasts, and leave a rating and review. Those ratings and reviews really help grow the show and help other people discover the show. And they help fund the production so that we can do bigger and better productions. Can't wait to share the next episode with you. Until then, see you later.